Dale Greer came around the curve at 45 miles an hour and hit his brakes hard enough to smell rubber. The tanker was jackknifed across both lanes, trailer angled into the east ditch, cab riding the yellow line. The school bus had come in behind it, the front end crumpled against the tanker's rear axle housing, steam and smoke mixing in the flat Oklahoma air. The propane transfer line had sheared on impact. Dale could smell it before he'd killed the engine. He could see the orange lick of fire starting at the undercarriage of the tanker where a spark had caught something it shouldn't have. He was out of his truck in 4 seconds. He had his phone to his ear calling dispatch in 5. He was Army Reserve, Warrant Officer 2, 3 tours in theater, and he'd seen enough bad situations to know what this one was. A compression fire working toward a loaded tanker in Garfield County, Oklahoma, one county EMT behind him, a school bus with children in it. He did not panic. He ran the math and did not like the answer. The EMT was a kid named Todd, 23 at most, pale at the smell of the propane. Dale got him moving toward the rear of the bus, back doors, low smoke, the part that could be done, and took the edge of the blast radius line himself. 200 feet from the valve housing. He stood there and thought about the children in the front section and what it would take to reach them and whether he could survive it, and the math kept coming back wrong. He heard tires on gravel behind him. A gray pickup had stopped on the shoulder, driver's door already open. The woman who stepped out was in a brown work shirt, cargo pants, brown boots with grease on them. Her hair was pulled back. She looked about 30. She was not running. She walked toward him at a pace that struck him later as the kind of pace a person uses when they have been to places where running gets people killed. "Ma'am." Dale held up one hand. He had full authority over exactly nothing in this moment. He was off duty, in his personal vehicle, in his civilian clothes, but the word came out with weight anyway. "I need you to move back to the shoulder. This tanker has a compromised valve and we have a live fire at the undercarriage. I need you behind that line." She stopped beside him. She looked at the tanker. She looked at the smoke. She tilted her face slightly into the wind, a small thing, half a second, and then she looked at the fire the way a person looks at a problem they have already solved. "Winds out of the northwest," she said. 8, maybe 10 knots. The fire's tracking southeast. The blind side of the tanker is the northeast quarter. You get a crew on the north shoulder with a drychem line, they can work that gap for about 4 minutes before the draft shifts. Dale stared at her. "Kids are in the front third of the bus," she said. "That section's got a minute 30 before the smoke gets critical. Driver's door is jammed on the tanker housing, you can't go from the street side. But the emergency hatch above the driver's seat opens inward, and if the tanker's still riding the line, there's 18 inches of clearance on the north shoulder side. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to." She was already walking. Dale's first instinct was to catch her arm. She was already past him. He watched her arc wide around the tanker's southeast quarter, away from the fire, away from the valve housing, and come at the bus from the north shoulder side. She walked through a wall of thin smoke that Dale had written off as impassable. He lost her for 40 seconds. The county EMT had gotten 2 kids off the rear exit. Dale counted them at the tree line and keyed his radio and gave the updated situation to dispatch and kept his eyes on the north shoulder of the tanker and did not breathe quite right for those 40 seconds. She came out with a child under each arm. 7 years old, maybe 8, he couldn't tell, their faces were pressed into her shoulders. She walked them to the tree line, set them down, said something to them Dale couldn't hear, and turned around. He put his hand on her shoulder. "There's one more," she said. "The driver. He's conscious. The door's fouled but the hatch gives you enough. The draft is going to shift. I know when the draft shifts." She said it without heat. She said it the way a person states a fact about something they have personally measured. "I've got 90 seconds. He let go of her shoulder. He told himself afterward it was because the county fire engine was 90 seconds out and he needed to vector them in. That was partly true. The fuller truth was that something in the way she'd said those words removed the option of arguing. Not arrogance. Certainty. The kind that comes from a specific kind of training that Dale Greer, 11 years in the Army, recognized the shape of even when he couldn't name it yet. She went back in. The county engine arrived. Dale waved them to the north shoulder, called out the valve position, called out the draft, used words that matched exactly what the woman had told him. The crew chief looked at him for half a second before nodding and moving his team. The fire was on the southeast quarter. The blind side was open. They got the drychem line on the valve housing in under 2 minutes. The woman came out with the bus driver. He was a heavy-set man, probably 55, one hand pressed to a cut on his forehead, moving under his own power but not steadily. She had his arm across her shoulders and she walked him to the tree line the same way she'd walked everything else, at the measured pace of someone who has counted their steps before taking them. She set him down in the grass. She checked his pupils, checked his airway, pressed 2 fingers to his wrist, said something to Todd the EMT who came over and crouched down. Then she straightened up and stepped back. Dale was standing 10 feet away. He did not say anything for a moment. He was aware of the fire crew working behind him, of the radio on his belt, of the children sitting in the grass with a volunteer's emergency blanket over their shoulders. He was aware that what he had just watched happen did not fit inside the category of things a civilian in a brown work shirt did on the shoulder of a county road. "What's your name?" he said. She looked at him. Her face was calm in a way that had nothing to do with the absence of feeling. It was the calm of someone who has been asked questions under worse conditions than this one. "Ren," she said. "Ren what?" "Adair." She looked back at the fire crew, watching the line. "You've got a good draft side approach. They'll have it in 8 minutes." She was right about that too. Dale Greer stood on that highway shoulder for another 40 minutes, giving statements to the county sheriff, getting the all-clear from the fire crew. Ren Adair sat on the tailgate of her gray pickup, answered the sheriff's questions, and drove away when she was released. Dale ran her plates before he left the scene. He told himself it was the liability question, a civilian involved in a firefighting action, he'd need the information for the county report. The real reason was the 40 seconds when she'd gone into that smoke and what her face had looked like when she came out. Her vehicle registration came back to A.W. Adair with a Dalton, Oklahoma address. The rest was above his access level. He made one phone call to a contact in Army personnel. His contact called back in 6 hours, voice flat and careful, reading something he was making sure he was reading correctly. "Chief," his contact said, "where exactly did you say you met this woman?" The county firehouse in Dalton held 4 bays, a meeting room with folding chairs, a coffee machine donated in 1987 that still worked, and on the Tuesday night 7 days after the accident, 31 people. The sheriff was there. Todd the EMT was there. The 2 children and their parents. The bus driver with a bandage on his forehead and his wife beside him. Dale Greer in his Army uniform, which he had not worn to this county in 7 years. A lieutenant colonel named Vasquez stood at the front of the room with a manila folder. Ren Adair sat in the second row in a clean work shirt. She had been told only that the county wanted to do a brief recognition. She had come because the sheriff had asked her and because it would have been impolite not to. She sat with her hands in her lap and her face composed in the way Dale had come to associate with her, not absent, not indifferent, simply still. Lieutenant Colonel Vasquez opened the folder. "Staff Sergeant Ren Adair," he said. "United States Army. Medically separated, December of the year she turned 29. Prior to separation, the following." He looked down at the page. AH, 64 Apache pilot qualification, youngest woman in the Army's history to earn certification. 243 confirmed combat flight hours across 6 deployments. Combat Action Badge. Air Medal with Valor Device. And 1 sealed extraction package designated Operation Halcyon, a night attack extraction that pulled 8 men off a collapsed ridgeline under sustained hostile fire, with no wingman and a damaged sensor suite, executed at her sole discretion after communications with command were severed. The room was quiet. Dale watched Ren's face. She was looking at the folder. Her expression had not changed. But her hands, which had been resting flat on her thighs, were very still in a way that was different from their stillness before. "The call sign attached to that package," Vasquez said, "is Halcyon. The Army uses it as a classifier. The men who were on that ridgeline use it somewhat differently." He nodded toward the back of the room. Dale turned. The door had opened. 12 men came in. They were in civilian clothes, jeans, work shirts, boots, but they moved the way men move when moving in formation is something their bodies remember even when they're not trying. They ranged from maybe 25 to 40. Some of them were broad, some of them lean. All of them had the same look on their face, which was the look of men who have been waiting to do something for a long time and have finally been given the chance. The one in front was a sergeant first class with a graying beard and a jaw that looked like it had been formed by someone with a strong opinion about jawlines. He walked to the second row and stopped in front of Wren. She looked up at him. "Sergeant Adair," he said. "Sergeant Dillard." Her voice was even. "We've been trying to find you for 2 years," he said. "The army doesn't make that easy." "I wasn't trying to make it easy," she said. He nodded once, as though that was exactly the right answer. Then he stepped back, and every one of the 12 men behind him came to attention. It was not a formal salute. There was no flag, no ceremony, no officer calling the command. It was 12 men, in a county firehouse in Oklahoma, straightening their spines and squaring their shoulders at the same moment without anyone telling them to. The kind of attention that does not require an order because it comes from somewhere deeper than rank. Dale Greer was standing against the wall with his arms at his sides. He had been in the army for 11 years. He had stood in formations, attended ceremonies, seen honors given to men who deserved them. He had never seen anything quite like what was happening in the middle of this room, 12 men standing at attention for a woman in a work shirt sitting in a folding chair. He thought about the 40 seconds. The smoke. Her walking back in. He thought about the words on the highway shoulder, "I know when the draft shifts." He had spent 7 days telling himself that what he'd watched was quick thinking, a calm head, a lucky read of the wind. Trying to fit what he'd seen into a category that made sense for a parts counter worker from Dalton. Every time he tried, the fit was wrong. Standing in that firehouse, Dale stopped trying. She was a pilot. A combat pilot who had flown 243 hours in places Dale could not imagine, who had read that highway fire the way she had read 1,000 threats from 200 feet in the air. She had not been lucky. She had been trained. Dale knew the difference between those two things. He had spent 7 days pretending he didn't. He straightened his own spine. He was not one of the 12. He had no standing in this room, no connection to that ridgeline, no claim to what these men were offering. But he straightened his spine anyway, because it was the only honest thing he had left to do. Wren looked at the 12 men standing for her. She looked at them for a long moment, and something crossed her face that was not quite emotion and not quite the absence of it, something in between, the expression of a person receiving something they had decided they would never need. Then she stood up. She stood up slowly, and she faced them, and she said nothing, because there was nothing to say that the 12 men standing in that room had not already said for her. Lieutenant Colonel Vasquez folded the manila folder closed. The bus driver's wife was crying quietly in the corner. The children from the bus were watching with the open-faced attention of children who do not yet know exactly what they are seeing but understand, without being told, that it matters. Dale Greer looked at the floor for a moment. He looked back up. He had told her to step back on a county road in Oklahoma and she had walked into a burning school bus instead, and 12 Rangers had traveled a combined distance of 4,000 miles to stand in a folding chair room for her, and Dale thought he probably understood now what the word soldier actually meant. He thought he had understood it before. He had been wrong about that.